Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This week's episode is a special one for me because, as I stated on my Instagram reel, I am joined by someone special making her podcast debut, my wife Anne. We're sitting down together to share our immediate reactions to the animated short Versa on Disney+. No overthinking, no deep prep, just real-time thoughts, emotions, and maybe a few disagreements along the way. So let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, welcome, Anne. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
As I stated, Anne is my wife of over 10 years. We have 4 children, Ryder being our oldest, and Ryder is the focal point of this podcast and our survival after losing him and coming out. I don't want to say coming out the other side. It's still an active journey. We're doing it every day. But again, Anne, thank you for being here. Let's get into the discussion. We are talking about Versa, now available on Disney+. It's gotten a lot of airplay on social media, a lot of articles written online. This is a big deal for Disney. They're going into this somewhat uncharted territory for a major animation studio. Mm-hmm. They have touched on loss before. We've all seen Up, Bambi. Loss is no stranger in the Disney landscape, but this is different. That the loss of a child is not something that they have approached or breached, and so definitely delicate. What were your first reactions to watching the film?
So, full disclosure, I learned of the short being put out on Disney+, I don't know, a week before we actually sat down to watch it. And in that week, I prepped for something I had no idea how it was going to feel or look. But what I told myself was I need to be in the space. I need to, have a box of tissues. I know I love Disney. I love what they do. And so I expected to have a very emotional response to the short. So I did. I liked it. We watched it twice, kind of back to back. And then I took notes the second time, but I liked it. There were some things that I needed to sit with and think about before I really understood it and see a second time too. But I expected to have a more emotional response than I did, which I don't think right, wrong, or otherwise. That is what's important.
For me, in my first reactions, very similar. I wanted to have bigger emotions around this piece. And I think part of it is that we're so familiar with this space because not only have we lived it, but we talk about it a lot. It is a focal part in our life. We have done things with different organizations, different events that center around the loss of Ryder. We talk about him all the time. He is up top of mind with our friends and family constantly. And so when I watched this and preparing to watch this, I thought there were going to be some bigger emotions. But I do think that, not to speak for you, but I'm going to here for a second and we'll talk about it. But I think we are more comfortable in this space than a lot of other people. And so I have read things online about the reaction and how emotional it was, the people having to get into the right mindset to be able to watch it. I understand that, and I know that there are a large portion of the audience that is having that type of reaction. We just didn't. And I think it might be because of the work that we've done in the last 7 years to get to where we're at in this space. That's just my opinion.
I wonder how many people outside of this community tuned in, Did you see anything online like that there was, because this is very personal. And so I don't know the answer to that, but I wonder if I would have watched this or sought it out 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the actual numbers. I do know that people outside of the community are watching it, because I have seen some of those reviews on Instagram, Facebook, different online articles as I was researching the film and the filmmaker, who definitely deserves a mention here. Melkin is a Disney animator. He's been a Disney animator his entire career. He has always wanted to be a Disney animator, and he suffered a loss, him and his wife, during the making of Moana, and went into a very dark place where he just focused on his work. And his wife took them on this journey. She was going through the work, going into the nursery, doing all of the things to heal, and he was not. And that's actually how this short film starts. He actually talks about some of this very directly at the very beginning of the film. So the runtime of the entire thing is about 12 and a half minutes, but the first couple of minutes is the animator, the director, talking through the loss a little bit and what brought him to create Versa. And I thought that was, for me, that was one of the most emotional parts of the film, because that introduction, it is his story. It is really personal. It's not an interpretation. It's his actual story.
Yeah. And I think I want to come back to this point, because he was speaking during it. It wasn't dialogue, but it was his background and his personal experience. But then when we move into the movie, at a basic level, it's about a couple who loses their baby. But it's shown through light and movement and colors and in the absence of words, which is, maybe just sort of human. You connected to this story, the words, a little bit more than just the music and the dancing and all of that.
I think that's an important point, talking about the lack of dialogue in the film, the dancing, the music. It very much reminded me of Fantasia. And Fantasia is critically acclaimed. It is one of those Disney films that I think people either love or hate. There's not too many people that are in the middle on it. And so I think that was a bold choice from an animation standpoint. But I think the emotion, the style of the animation, everything works in this piece. But it does draw me to similarities within Fantasia and the style. And so if you are a Disney fan and you're watching this film and you don't love Fantasia, you may not love this. There is no dialogue, as you said. If you are part of the group that loves Fantasia, I think the emotions that we're speaking to that maybe didn't hit us as hard as we thought, they maybe be there for that group. Again, it was a choice the animator made, and it was a personal choice for him.
One of the things I think we should touch on is when they, in this dance and after the light fades and they've lost the baby, they drift apart, and there's the cracking of the bodies. Like, what do you think that's to symbolize?
Yes. So in the film, when the loss occurs, what really stood out is the mother entity, or the mother figure in this piece. She is very in tune with the loss, and she is putting herself in it. She is in the nursery, and every time the father entity tries to pull her out of that scene or that area, she keeps going back to it. And he is standing on the outside of that nursery space. The mother fractures. Her heart is broken. That light goes out in her belly, and you could tell that the mother has changed physically. That is very apparent in the animation. It's like an earthquake goes through her body and leaves her broken throughout her entire space. By staying in the nursery and grieving, those spaces are filled with a light. Mm-hmm. It's not the same light that was the baby, but it does kind of fill in those cracked spaces, and there is a type of ceramic in it's either the Chinese or the Japanese culture where they
I was thinking this too.
Where they fix things using gold.
Pottery with gold.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that is definitely the symbolism that they're going for here. And she's not better. She's not
how she was before.
Right.
But she is still whole. Like it's as though like you can still see the cracks, but the light is shining through them. Like you said, it's kind of back to that old.
Right. The loss has now become a part of her, but she's not fixed. She's still, and I don't want to say she's not broken. She's not fixed. She's not broken. She is a new form.
Yeah, learning to live.
Right.
With these cracks. Yeah.
And the father starts to pick up on this as they are moving through this dance, and the movements are very different than they were in the beginning when she was pregnant and they were happy, and there's a lot more pushing away rather than pulling towards. And the father picks up on that, goes to that nursery space, and then that's when his fractures occur. Mm-hmm. Very symbolic. I think, for me, it took me back to, it's related but unrelated. It took me to the instance where I came home from work, and you and your sister Julie had, moved some things around, cleaned up the nursery a bit, and totally different. But I put myself in that space because when this happened in our loss, we went to the nursery right away. We saw the book, Wherever You Are, My Love Will Find You. Like, we had our breakdown moment at home immediately after losing Ryder. But the nursery is a sacred space in this animation or in this short film. And I can equate to that because I feel like that was also a sacred space for us. And I remember the one day I came home from work and there were some things moved around and I just broke down. We didn't fight. We didn't argue. It wasn't like a good, bad situation. But I just remember, like, this isn't how it's supposed to be. And like that space being so sacred. And they do depict that in this film pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I think it also, I don't want to take this in a different direction, but the grieving being different, the meaning you placed on whatever was moved was, there was meaning there. There was emotion there where, I don't even recall like what was rearranged or whatever, but I think that is also like these in the short, they are grieving differently there, and whether it's because society or he himself thinks that he needs to be strong for his wife, or that he just isn't processing it the same way. Like, who's to say? I guess that open-endedness is why it can apply to so many people.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's the strength, like being strong. I think a lot of it is just the stubbornness in men to just not feel emotions, to not think through things or talk through things the way that, they probably should be for, health reasons, mental health reasons, and, sanity's sake. I think you just bottle a lot of things in, and that definitely comes across in this too. Like that separation of, kind of blocking out the hard stuff was definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I didn't love in this short film, once the father goes into the nursery, spends that time with the mom, and he does start to fracture, those breaks occur, and he breaks down in the film. There is it happens really quick, and then there's a total transformation in the mom, the father. They kind of crumble together, and which I think symbolizes that, like, finally there's this shared moment in grief between them, and they both really break down to nothing, which definitely happens.
Yeah. And when you say crumble, you mean like when they had like that breakdown, that
Yes.
like unified crying,
like,
and yeah.
And they literally broke apart, like they crumbled. And like,
Okay.
and I don't want to go in, like, for people that are going to watch this, I don't want to go into too many specific details. The only thing I didn't love in that moment, because I think it's a real moment, it's a true moment in these types of situations, I feel like it happened too quickly. The dad's transformation was very, very fast, where, I just feel like that could have been drawn out a little bit more. I know it's a short film, but for me, I feel like that space deserved a little bit more than it was given, because it's not that instantaneous at all.
So I hear what you're saying about it happening too quick, but kind of what comes to mind for me is that not every couple does come back together. I remember in the, I don't know, within a day of losing Ryder, I remember getting a phone call and just hearing like, you and Nick are strong, like you can get through this, you can do this. And in my head, I was like, well, yeah, I couldn't possibly do this with anyone else. And I don't know, I mean, I do know that this doesn't happen for every couple or everyone who makes a baby, like especially in loss, like we have seen it. It's torn people apart because of the way grief presents itself differently, or how different people handle grief. And so maybe that's a reason for the quick response, is that, they kept so many things so broad within the shorts and, open to interpretation, that perhaps, I don't know, maybe I'm giving reason to something that doesn't exist, but that's something that just came up for me as you're talking about that. Like, in this short, they come back together, but that's just not always the case. Right.
And we definitely have seen that in our groups and things. Not every couple survives.
And some, for better or worse, like who's to say that, but yeah, it felt really real to me. Because you don't come back to the couple you were. Actually, something I wanted to make sure that I said was, you said something really that has stuck with me through this journey within days of losing Ryder. And I'm going to paraphrase, but I hope I can summarize accurately. What you had said was, I was expecting to come home and everything was going to be different. And that is what happened, but not in the way that I'd planned. Like, everything is different because we don't have this baby, because this is what we've lived through, not because Ryder is here with us. So do you remember saying that?
Everything was different, but in like all the worst ways.
Yeah, that's how you said it, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
So, if you had to sum it up.
Well, before we sum things up.
No, I'm not.
And before we sum everything up, and if you've not seen this and you plan on watching it, you don't want any spoilers, don't listen to this part. At the end of the film, there is another baby that is born, and the joy is there. the father, the mother are still fractured. They're still broken. They are fused together through the light that fills the cracks. That is all still there, and I think that is great. We talk about rainbow babies, angel babies, all of the things that people call children after loss, and that can be a beautiful healing thing, but it doesn't take away from the loss. The loss is still there, and I think this film shows that really well. What I would have liked to have seen at the end, because that light from the pregnancy is still there. It is depicted like in the universe that they live in space, and it's still depicted. And then the father presents a baby, or the new baby, with a similar gift that he puts in the nursery at the very beginning of the film. And I think for me, that symbolizes things that we've done. We use the use of clouds and other things with our current children that very heavily symbolize Ryder, but now it's a shared thread with all of our children. And I think this film shows that beautifully. I think this is something that families do. What I would have liked to see is that kind of fissure start slightly with the child. And this is just my opinion, because I do think for us, our children do know that they have a brother. They do feel the loss. They do feel that the lack of him being there. They ask questions. They talk about Ryder. And so I do think those cracks are going to be part of that new child as well. And I would have liked to see that depicted, but that's just my own personal critique.
I liked, it was enough for me to see that. I think as a lost mom, I know, if not demand, that Ryder have a place in our story. And so for me to see the light that is depicted as the baby change throughout the short and whatnot, like that was enough for me. I hear what you're saying, like you would have liked to see it transferred onto the sibling. But yeah, I didn't, nothing was lacking there for me.
Okay. I know. I think that's fair. I mean, and I'm sure that there are some people that are listening to this that would say that I am wrong, and putting that on the child is, a terrible thing. But these stories are part of our family, and so that was just my opinion.
Yeah. No. It's not wrong. But
all right. So quickly, do you think that the lack of dialogue in this film led you to connect more or less in the with the overall film?
Okay, well, I'm not a Fantasia fan, so you're pretty spot on here. Less, I would say, and there were other things that the second time around I got more, but I too connected more with Malcolm in the beginning when he explained things. Now I have sat a couple days with my notes and, thinking about what the short was. So I've kind of rounded out my thoughts, but I think just being who I am, like I get there faster with words. So it was a good exercise in my creativity, I think, but I don't mind dialogue. I think it would have helped me a little bit more.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that these stories of loss, particularly out of order loss and infant loss, are so personal and difficult that I think, I don't want to say they require words, but I appreciate the words. I appreciate the dialogue. I mean, I'm doing a whole podcast about the loss of our son. So I think the words at the beginning where he was introducing the film were the most powerful piece, because I felt connected to him and his story. And there were so many overlaps with him and his story. I mean, down to when I was in high school and going through all of my art classes, I wanted to be a Disney animator. That was the dream. And so I felt very connected to Melkin in those moments. I enjoy Fantasia. I think the animation in this is beautiful. I think the use of color is great. The reds, the blues, and then, into some of the darker purples when they're mourning the loss. And I think it's beautifully done. But the dialogue for me, I think would have helped me connect with the two main characters, the mother and the father, in ways that I expected to, but didn't.
As you were talking, and I keep coming back to this, so we're looking at it through our lens, our very specific lens, like the overlapping in the story. But what about the people who don't have the words, don't have the support that we have had to put into words our grief? Like, is it a nod to that? Like, sometimes grief can't be expressed in words. And so maybe this is evoking like a strong feeling in their body. There was one moment, and it was during the light dimming, where my body felt like numb or hollow or just like still. So maybe that was the goal of the lack of dialogue. Also, what could have been said?
Right.
It would have been it wouldn't have been a short if he had to come up with the dialogue. Plus, you had the potential to lose the open-endedness of the interpretation.
Yeah, and I think that's key here, is that we know a little bit about Malkin's story and how he lost their son Cooper, and there are very direct parallels to our story. And so I think with dialogue, we would have felt super connected to this loss. Mm-hmm. And for somebody that had a different journey, whether it be infertility, pregnancy loss early on, or infant loss after pregnancy, would the impact be there? And I think that is a fantastic point. This is much more general, and I think open to all of the emotions across the board, where with the dialogue being more specific, being directed towards their specific loss, yes, it would have hit us so much harder, but the audience for that film would have been so much less.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So what was your big takeaway after watching it all, thinking through it, talking through it? What is your final assessment of Versa?
I valued the coming back together. The coming back together with the cracks still intact, but different. I think what I was trying to say before, when it was like a person can live through this and come back changed, but not
still the same, but different.
Yeah. Your shape has changed. Your outlook has changed. For right, wrong, or otherwise, better or worse, you view things through a different lens, which, that's kind of all of our experiences can do this for us. But at least in this story, the love didn't disappear after loss. It just shifted. The love for the baby, the love for their partner, like it just looked different.
Yeah, I think what they do show in the love space specifically is that the opportunity for it to slip away was there, mm-hmm. and they show that, mm-hmm. and they made the conscious effort as a couple, and the mom kind of pushed this or pulled him in to the nursery and to that grief space, and then they felt it together. That was depicted, and I think that was great. Overall, I think this is 12 minutes. It is worth the watch. Mm-hmm. I think it will give people some understanding of the emotions that are in this space. It is worth your 12 minutes. Would I have made the same choices? Maybe not. But would it have been as appreciated with such a broad audience? Probably not. But I think 100% worth the watch. It is available on Disney Plus. It is 12 minutes long, give or take. We will watch it with our children. We'll see what that dialogue looks like, and what that brings. But that is our personal choice with our family. And our kids are used to this space. We don't shy around, or we don't shy away from it in our house.
Yeah, I think if a person has been through something like this, like the film could hit. It could hit hard or make a person feel seen. And if someone who hasn't been through it, like, it's a good reminder to have some compassion for the people who have. Compassion for their loss, compassion for their relationship, compassion for how they do or do not show up.
So with those final thoughts, again, Versa is available on Disney Plus. Definitely recommend to watch. Next week, we will get back to our regularly scheduled podcasts. We'll go back to Ryder's story and start, continuing talking through that journey. Hopefully we'll see you next week.